Hello, everyone, and welcome to the other side of the news. Let's take a look at today's Wall Street Journal for Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. I'll start with the front page today. There's some highlights here. Tesla hits landmark profit as it looks to joining the S&P. Eligibility for index comes as electric car maker plans a second U.S. plant in Texas, in fact, by Austin. Oh, they beat earnings, but they only beat earnings because they sold some of their little carbon index thing. You know how that goes. Chinese consulate. Short on cash, small businesses brace for a long crisis. Let's talk about this. DOJ plans surge of agents into cities. Federal officials said they plan to send hundreds of law enforcement officers to Chicago and other cities to help fight rising gun violence, as President Trump pressed a law and order message that paints the leaders of Democratic-run cities as too soft on crime. Well, okay, I'm not going to read this whole thing. Yeah, they are too soft on crime. And this hurts minority people more than anything. But at the same time, Trump, by putting himself into the cities in some place he shouldn't be, he's going to end up, the old adage, you break it, you buy it. When everything goes wrong, they're going to blame him. Let the cities fall apart on their own. Let's see what else we got. Lockdowns curb Southern Hemisphere flu. Wow. Steps taken to fight COVID-19 have all but wiped out seasonal respiratory viruses. For the past 2 months, as winter descended on Chile, infectious disease specialist Claudia Cortez worked tirelessly to keep a wave of critically ill COVID-19 patients alive in the hospital where she works. At the same time, she worried about what would happen when the usual wave of influenza patients arrived. They never came. From Argentina to South Africa to New Zealand, countries in the Southern Hemisphere are reporting far lower numbers of influenza and other seasonal respiratory viral infections this year. In some countries, the flu seems to have all but disappeared, a surprise silver lining that health experts attribute to measures to corral the coronavirus, such as mask use and restrictions on air travel. Folks, this says it all. You wear a mask and it's going to help you. Moving on. You already heard my mask diatribe. Let's look at this a little bit. Tesla hits landmark earnings. It was from the front page. Talked about it, but let's take a look at this, at their share price. From January, they were 400. Then they went in that first peak we had up to like 900 in March, went back down to 400, and now they're closed yesterday at $15.92. Oh my God, folks, this is going to be a $2,000 stock. Now, whether they warned it or not, it's another thing, but clearly it's going to be a $2,000 stock within months. Let's see what else we got. Yes, that size, because I didn't buy Tesla when I should have. Taiwan moves to change airline name and its flag, in fact, too, to make it look less Chinese. Not a bad idea. Tourist spots open with few tourists. Yeah, okay, we know that. We're going to skip that. Comic-Con gets virtual and free. Let's read this. Progressives to cities drop dead. On Tuesday, the New York City sky was clear blue and filled with sunshine. That's it for this week's good news. We turn now to Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Chicago, San Francisco, and all of America's other seemingly godforsaken cities. President Trump watches a lot of television, so he's seeing the same daily urban nightmares we're seeing. It's hard not to sympathize with his instinct to send in federal authorities to restore civil order to cities like Portland, as he proposed Wednesday with the expansion of an urban anti-crime initiative called Operation Legend to Chicago and Albuquerque. It's equally hard to disagree that other than protecting federal facilities, Mr. Trump should let all of these smug Portlandia American cities stew in their own juices. I loved it when Portland's Mayor Ted Wheeler said the federal presence is actually leading to more violence and more vandalism. Where's Groucho Marx when we need him to make sense of this nonsense? Still, no matter one's politics, it's sickening to see this happening to any U.S. city. Mobs hammering and burning buildings along Portland streets, and then a carbon copy mob battering Seattle. Days before, we'd watch videos of two groups of police beaten bloody on the Brooklyn Bridge. Days later, 15 people were wounded in a gun battle in a Chicago funeral for the victim of a drive-by gang shooting. There is a serious matter of civil order at issue here. But if we look beyond the mayhem, perhaps something else quite sad is happening. The irrepressible vitality of these cities, their reason for being, is disappearing, undone by pandemic lockdowns and a new culture of permanent protest. For years, I've been on the email list of Spike Wilner, the founder-owner of two jewel-like jazz clubs in New York's Greenwich Village, Smalls and Mizzow. Mr. Wilner's weekly paeans to jazz and the people who play it are always a good diverting read. This week's email was different. Here is a chunk of it, because he's got the city exactly right. It's hard to describe, but the feeling is gone, the vibe absent. The thing that made New York is missing. What's it like now? It's very tense. People are very anxious and angry. Everything is closed or, if open, listless. There is no nightlife. If you leave your apartment after 9 p.m., it's a complete ghost town inhabited by rats and zombies, dangerous people. In certain parts of town, you have a mob of folks partying outside, like a street fair. Other folks keep their masks tightly on and live in fear. The only place I've found some civility and warmth is the city's playgrounds, where I take my daughter each day. The children are oblivious to the pandemic and just play and climb. Outside wartime, with bombardments turning blocks into rubble, I'm hard put to think of any precedent for what is happening to these U.S. cities now. The enforced pandemic closures and isolation were bad enough, but the endless protests, with the instinct for violence and atmospheric dread, have broken the spirit of many cities. The political story of the 2016 presidential election was President Trump's identification of overlooked lower middle-class white voters in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. A new political division may be taking place now in the big cities between progressive elites and working-class residents, primarily the people who own or work for the storefront business that are the lifeblood of these cities. A story recently in Crane's New York Business described how the outdoor dining tables of restaurants in Bell Kitchen in Manhattan's West Side are overrun by disturbed or half-dressed beggars who Mayor Bill de Blasio administration has housed in nearby hotels. Said one resident owner, "Every bit of progress this neighborhood has made over the years is stepping backwards." Just like he's letting happen with schools and the police in New York. It's all going backwards, folks. During New York's 1970s financial crisis, the Daily News ran a famous headline about the then President Gerald Ford. Ford to city, drop dead. Here's the update. Progressives to cities, drop dead. People living and working in these cities, most of whom consider themselves liberal, are being sold out by progressive politicians and activists blinded by politics to the quality of daily life. Progressive prosecutors refuse to prosecute. Cops are holding back because progressive mayors and governors don't have their backs. Responding to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's directive that no alcohol can be served without food, many bar owners say they won't survive. The state's Labor Department just reported an unemployment rate in the Bronx of 25%, depression level. The progressive ruin of major cities inhabited by liberals is a significant political event. Consequences that might have merged over years have been compressed into months by the pandemic and protests. It is doubtful that many will check the box for Mr. Trump in November, but who knows? Their alternative is Joe Biden, whose contribution to the urban chaos this week was, "There is no reason for the president to send federal troops into cities where people are demanding change peacefully and respectfully." What city is he looking at? That was written by Daniel Henninger of the Wall Street Journal. Extremely well said. This is a mess, folks. Cities are a mess, and the Democrats are letting this happen. Thank you very much for watching the other side of the news. Please subscribe. Please leave comments. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.